Hey guys, happy Spooky Week! It's Carefully Madness, and today we are going to start a week of horrifying, terrifying fun. Okay, so starting today, I'm going to be doing an entire week of just Halloween themed stuff. Today, I'm going to be reading off Creepypasta, let's see what the rest of the week holds. Okay, so this Creepypasta is called Halloween's End. It was submitted by... It doesn't say. That's great. We're off to a great start here. Okay, well, I have no clue who it's by. It doesn't say, but it's called Halloween's End, and I'm reading off of creepypasta.com. You guys can go and check that out. It has tons of amazing, scary stories, and I absolutely love it. So let's get right in. The bitter cold of the night's sharp breath covered his gray skin in goosebumps. Under the glow of the pale moonlight, he drew ragged breaths that were quickly expelled from his lungs, as if the air was poisoned. Every movement was heavy, and his body ached. He reminded himself that it was all temporary, and the discomfort of human life would soon end. After all, sustaining himself in this form was only for one purpose, and its time was swiftly coming. He folded his great pearly wings close to his body and rose unsteadily to his feet, grimacing at the darkness of the deep alleyway around him. This was not the life he was used to. He was always disgusted by the filth. He smelt the stench of life around him, rotting rubbish, human sweat. It was all overpowering. The many puddles around him helped explain the high humidity and why the smell was far worse than he had expected. The last time he had walked the earth was so long before this age. The drone of air conditioning units hummed around him. He didn't want to be here, but his mission was too important. In the distance, he heard rock music and a cacophony of voices in the crowds. Laughter, crying, and shrieks of pleasure reached his ears. Bless me, Heavenly Father, for I walk through this valley of the shadow of death. I will fear no evil, for you are with me. I will not fail you, he said through firm lips, bringing his clenched fist to his chest. He began to shiver. Human life is so fragile, he thought. Smiling, he felt his heart thump within his chest. He knew he was near mortal, at least for a while. It had been a long time since he had ever risked living on Earth, and it would usually be unnecessary, as he could watch from a higher plane with no risk of dying a typical mortal's death. This could mean the end of him, but if that were to happen, he'd be reborn a new, invigorated life. His death would be a small price to pay if he could save her. The other 6 archangels had their own missions around the world, and through divine intervention, he was chosen for this task. His smile vanished the second he heard cans rattle by a nearby industrial bin. He instinctively reached for a sword of light strapped by his side, but suddenly remembered that he was naked. He knew his journey was fraught with danger. He longed for his eternal armor, but it was not to be. At the very least, he knew he still had his razor-sharp wings, which were stronger than any steel held by man. Father, hear my prayer, protect me, and deliver me from evil. Amen. He heard a desperate, pleading voice cry out from the darkness ahead. Whatever the hell you are, you're not from this earth, are you? I saw you appear out of thin air, and I've not been drinking tonight. Who are you? What are you? I am known as Bracelli, and from hell I am not. A wizened old man, bent almost double, warily approached him. The man was completely covered in dirt and clutched a woolen hooded coat. Lucifer could have already sent me through this man's eyes, in which it was only a matter of time. There was one thing I could do. He approached the old man, putting a hand on his shoulder, easing his wings to provide them both with some cover. The man's eyes widened and toothless. His open-mouthed grin stretched across his face. He held out his clasped hands. Many scars along his arms revealed a plethora of attempts at suicide. Oh my God, you're an angel, aren't you? I thought I'd heard your name in scripture. Please, I beg of you, take me out of this place. This life I lead isn't worth living anymore. The scriptures, Bracelli said slowly, almost in contempt, his voice drifting away as he paused to remember the Bible's worshipped in church. are the many books of men that don't contain the truth, despite whatever they choose to believe. They were penned in the name of God, but to make mockery of God's true self for their own gain. You're not the one I'm here for, but the end is near. The day of reckoning will come. Keep your faith, and you will join us in the afterlife. He wasn't sure if he was reassuring the man, but he couldn't tell him the whole truth. God's selection for heaven was not judged by going to church, reciting the Bible, or putting money in a collection plate. It was by one's hearts and actions. This man would most likely be destined for the underworld. Well, it's never too late to hope. Bracelli, I wish I didn't have to wait. What end are you talking about? I've not seen any signs. The signs are everywhere, my child. Ignore what you hear from preachers and open your eyes. The great battle to end the war is looming, and the world is the battlefield. The chime of a nearby clock tower reminded him of his mission. Earth was not timeless, and the sands of the hourglass were slipping by. Bracelli began to shiver, and his teeth were chattering. It was freezing, and he needed to find some clothes fast. He looked into the man's eyes and concentrated. A brilliant white light flashed from his eyes, and the old man stood as still as a statue. His face began to twist and turn. The old man's bloodshot eyes and black pupils confirmed the worst. A dark voice spilled from the possessed man's lips. Ah, Bracelli, it's been a long time, hasn't it? I don't know if you're brave or stupid to show your face on earth. Tell me, did you come here to die? Lucifer! With one smooth movement, Bracelli launched from the ground with an enormous flap of his wings, pulling the coat off the old man, and folded his wings as he landed near the bright end of the alley, toward the main street full of people. He covered himself and pulled the hood over his head as he ran through the shadows, heading toward the lights of the crowd. The hisses of the underworld lord dissipated as he blended in with the people around him, slowly regaining his bearings. The warmth of the old coat was a welcome change for his freezing body, but it wasn't enough. Staring at the clock tower as he fled through the main thoroughfare, he was nearly bowled over by a heavy-set man dressed as a vampire sneering at him. The sight of the man drenched in fake blood was confusing. The costumed vampire cried out, "You! Watch where you are going!" That's a bad word. The same incredulous vision haunted him, flashing again in his mind like some crazy nightmare he wished would end. He gripped his head and gritted his teeth as the scene played out in his mind. Gunfire was all around, and the streets were piling with dead bodies. The smell of rotting corpses and burnt gunpowder stained the air. Human cries of agony accomplished with the symphony of spent shells hitting the ground, and the whistle and thump of every bullet landing in flesh, concrete, walls, everything. It was an orchestrated attack. The demons were everywhere, with bloodshot eyes under white hockey masks splattered with the blood of their victims. Returning to reality and ignoring the man, Bracelli realized that he was in the city of Brisbane, in the far-off land of Australia. He had followed the signs of the vision to appear here. People were everywhere, the sound of laughter filling his ears. The smell of coffee and hot food was pleasantly contrasting aroma to the rotten stench of the alleyway. Many families and couples walked the streets, but almost everyone was dressed up for the occasion. He never understood this desire for humans to celebrate festivals of the living dead. Such foolishness. The smiling faces and joyful laughter of mortals parading the streets brought no happiness to his ears. Soon they would be dead, every single last one of them. Save one. He couldn't save them all, as much as he would love to try. But there's only so much he could do when the bullets fly. My mission and purpose is simple and must be carried out. I can't save them all, but I might just take some of the sinners with me. Lucifer, that bastard, his hand on everything bad that happens, mass murders, corrupt politicians, pedophiles, the list was endless. All with the hand of the devil himself on their shoulder. The ridiculousness of the Bible's assumption that Lucifer can only be in one place at one time was so far from the truth. He could be anywhere and everywhere at the same time, but his influence depended on the weak minds of his victims. He capitalizes on the moments where humans are susceptible to his evil. His formidable army of demons played their part on his behalf. They were almost as cruel as Lucifer himself. He continued racing toward the sign reading King George Square, the center of the city. This was where it would all take place, and the sea of blood would flow through the streets, or so it was prophesied. Massacres like the one that was to occur that night would be coordinated all over the world. Such other central locations as Red Square, Manhattan, Havana, New Delhi, Beijing, and Piccadilly Square would all fall under Lucifer's coordinated and lethal purge. So many souls would soon be flooded into the afterlife. Braccelli knew that Lucifer counted on his influence in shifting the balance of souls to his favor. They were on the cusp of the earth becoming a hellish battleground. The devil had been busy turning the world into a pool of true sinners. He had created cheats, murderers, rapists, and just general degenerates. Some barely needed his influence, and yet he still spurred them on. Those who die violently will most likely end up in between worlds. He would do everything to see that the war is won, but at what cost? A woman joyously calling over the loudspeaker interrupted his thoughts. Welcome to the 2015 Brisbane Halloween Festival. Happy Halloween, everyone. The band you've all been waiting for is about to take the stage. This is a special performance before their concert tomorrow night at the Brisbane Entertainment Centre. Please give it up for Metallica. The crowd cheered and whistled, holding up plastic lights in the shape of pumpkins and skulls. The sounds of a horrific war zone were slowly overshadowed by the chopping air of a helicopter as it descended from above. His face paled as he looked around. Surely it's not time yet. It's the band. Braccelli narrowed his eyes as he scanned through the crowd. He spotted the old man's twisted face and bloodshot eyes standing on a bench near the neon sign pointing at him. A number of men, women, and children were suddenly possessed. Their heads snapped unnaturally to stare at him, and they charged at his position. Damn you, Lucifer. He moved quickly, fleeing through the crowd, dropping his coat to wrap around his waist, while leaning down to disappear from sight. Some nearby children called out, "Hey man, that's an awesome costume!" Ignoring them and turning to a nearby Meijer store, Braccelli ran past the security guard who was too busy watching the group of leggy teenage women dressed as film characters to notice him. However, people stared at him, a barefoot man with wings in the middle of a department store, but he did not care. He knew that everyone was susceptible to Lucifer's reach, and he had to risk it. He had to blend in, and fast. When I find her, I can take her away from this forsaken place. I must be vigilant and hurry. He spotted the menswear section, running in between the aisles and dropping the homeless man's coat. He grabbed a pair of black business trousers, much to the wide of the eyes of a female shopper. "Well, I never," said the woman, watching him pull the pants on and rip the tag off of a nearby belt. He smiled at her, and she stared with flushed cheeks as he quickly dressed. Now I can move easier, but everyone will recognize his wings. A security guard approached him and grabbed his arms. "Excuse me, sir, but you have to come with me." Braccelli's eyes glowed, and with a flash of light, as he had with the elderly man, the guard froze, his eyes revealing terror that he had seized him. He hated scaring people. He had no time to allow anyone to detain him, or to have to explain why his wings aren't part of a costume. It would be 7 o'clock soon, and the massacre will begin. The musical chimes of the clock tower would soon play its song of death. Continuing his run through the store, he grabbed the largest black leather jacket he saw, groaning as he folded his wings as far as they could to hide their bulk. The wings' tips was past his buttocks, and he tried to fit into it. Once the jacket was on, the wings were nearly invisible, but now he had a slight problem of a hump on his back. Perfection was unattainable. It will have to do, given my circumstances. Shoes. I need shoes. Scanning his perpetual, he saw what he needed. He slipped on a decadent pair of black dress shoes. They were a tight fit of hard leather, but they had served well. Heading back towards Queen Street Mall, he picked up his old coat and he held it in his left hand. Everything in this world belonged to God, so it wasn't a sin for him to take what humans believed to be theirs. The security guard had seen earlier stared at him with a raised eyebrow, pressing the tip of his finger into his clear earpiece. Where was I? Braccelli turned to him, flinging the coat over the guard, as he fled through the security scanners, hearing the screaming siren coming from the alarm behind him. The square. Must get to the square. It's where I see her. When they all fall. He turned right, disappearing in the thick crowd, ignoring the desperate shouting of the security guard far behind him. A smiling woman, dressed in an angel with plastic wings, handed him a balloon. She held out a handful of paper masks, and he gratefully reached for one. Here you go, handsome. Happy Halloween, she said. God bless your kind heart, he replied. He held the mask in his hands, staring at the painting of the devil, grimacing at the thought of wearing a depiction of Lucifer. It was the best disguise he could think of, as the real devils would never suspect it. Slipping the mask over his head and adjusting the strap, he continued through the crowd toward the lights, emasculating from the square. The sound of the rock band was getting louder with each step he grew closer. He knew he was heading in the right direction. They were all converging in the same direction, and he stayed in the current-like flow of people. He heard the hiss of a voice a short distance from him. Frightened by Chelly, he couldn't have gone far. It's working. The singer's voice filled the air. Now the world's gone, I'm just one. Oh God, help me. Hold my breath as I wish for death. Most of the crowds raised their hand and chanted, Oh God, oh please God, help me. Scanning the crowd, he still didn't see her. He knew he had to find her. He reminded himself to have faith and believed in his purpose. Many parents near him held their children, some carrying them on their shoulders, as they took them toward the surprisingly enjoyable music. He wanted to save them all, but if he induced panic, he may never find her again. He had to stay focused. He pushed through the crowd and caught sight of the stage, the band's musicians furiously belting the drums and slashing the guitar to their opening song. He remembered the song that was playing when the gunman appeared in his vision, and this one wasn't it. The clock tower was nearing 7 o'clock, and he still hadn't seen her. Straining his memory, he remembered that he had saw her bloodied body on the ground. She was wearing a brown jacket and jeans. Her jet black hair was tied in a ponytail. Come on, show yourself. Your salvation depends on it. The crowd erupted in cheers and applause as the first song wrapped up. Bracelli pushed and shoved his way toward the edge of the square. His heart raced as he frantically searched the crowd. There was just too many people for him to find her. Thank you, Brisbane. Are you ready for Master of Puppets? The crowd, his mind raced and the rock music only loudened. There was no way she would hear him, and he couldn't see her. Father, if you can hear me, now is the time for a sign. Help me find her, I beseech you. He stood as tall as he could and scanned the crowd once more. The crowd chanted with pumped fists in the air. Master! Master! Where's the dreams I've seen before? Where's the dreams that I've been after? The band sung. As the crowd raised their hands and rhythmically clapped, he finally saw her. She was in the thick of the crowd, and he growled as he pushed his way through the crowd. They pushed back, raising their fists at him. Violence would be a final solution, but he could not harm an innocent. On the outskirts of a concert, men wearing hockey masks and trench coats surrounded him. They had climbed statues of King George, the lions, and many beseeches scattered around the square. A number of men, women, and children started to run from the crowd, determination clearly painted on their faces. One of them passed me, and he saw clearly that they had been possessed. It wasn't the innocent that fled the massacre grounds. The band played on, singing and playing louder. Hell is worth all that, natural habitat, just a rhyme without a reason, never-ending maze drift on numbered days. Now your life is out of season, I will occupy, I will help you die, I will run through you, now I rule you. The iconic lyrics sent shivers down his spine. This was all from his vision. He could not control what he had seen. It would all begin in a moment, and he had to save her. It was no longer a choice of how. He never enjoyed spilling blood, but he had to protect his children. Narrowing his eyes and gritting his teeth, he gripped his jacket and spat out his words, "Forgive me, Father, for I must sin." His eyes glowed as he ripped the jacket off him, turning its buttons in its process. He crouched down and pounded his fist on the ground. A shockwave sent the nearest idiots flying backward into a bulk of the crowd. He extended his wings and locked vision with the gunmen as they, in turn, drew off their coats, revealing their body armor. They held M4A1 Colt carbine machine guns and chests were fully strapped magazines. He had to get their attention now. It has begun. A nearby man cried, "Holy crap, that's not a costume," staring at him in disbelief as the others started to follow his gaze. "All of you run! Save yourself!" Bertelli said. The old man suddenly appeared beside one of the gunmen, once again pointing at him frantically. As if he had slowed down, Bertelli launched himself from the ground with unnatural but self-assured strength. He watched as the men around him took aim with their machine guns, but they were too slow. He suddenly swooped down and reached for the nearest gunman, grabbing him from behind and then rocketing in the sky. White bullet trails filled the star-speckled sky, and his hostage began to open fire randomly. Bertelli leaned in so he could hear him. "Thou shalt not kill." Another bad word. "You," the gunman screamed. As Bertelli let go of him, snatching the weapon from his hands, he plummeted through the air, dodging the bullets. The gunman's eyes returned to normal, and his screams continued as he realized his fate, crashing in the roof of the city hall, his head splitting like a tomato, his lifeless body now a mass of broken bones and guts. A stray bullet grazed Bertelli's shoulder, and he cried out in shock, but continued his path toward the swarming and scattering crowd, hunting for his quarry. She can't have gone far. Looking down to his horror, he saw Lucifer pointing in the crowd. Some of the gunmen were indiscriminately slaughtering police, and those who had foolishly engaged them in any manner were swiftly executed. The rest opened fire on the crowd. "God, no!" Thankfully, he spotted her again. She was crouched on the ground, as close to the ground as she could press her body. Bertelli just couldn't tell if it was either in pain or fright. An image flashed in his mind. She died there. He landed harshly on the ground beside her, cracking the ground beneath him. He pulled her as close to her as he could, and covered them both in his wings. He knew he could stop the bullets, but also knew his wings weren't going to cover every angle. She turned to him with quivering pink lips and a tear-soaked face. "Am I dead?" she asked. They must have turned their guns on him as he groaned in the strength required to hold their position under a barrage of bullets. This is not the first time he had seen gun and death that follows them, and he knew that they would have to reload soon. He looked deep into Mary's aqua eyes, knowing full well how important she was. He didn't have time to explain it all. "Mary, you have to trust me. You're not dead. Listen to what I say. Let me guide you, and you'll stay that way. Get ready to move." She nodded and swallowed hard, gritting her teeth. Bertelli realized the pool of blood had built beside them and flowed under his wings. Lollies and plastic packets floated beneath their faces. The bullets slowed, and he grabbed her by the hand, walking her away from the square as he kept his wings around them both. The sight before them was truly horrifying. Everyone in their nearest range had been slaughtered. Women, children, and men were lying ghastly, unnatural positions, covered in blood. They stepped over the bodies. This was the kind of horror that was truly disturbing to witness. The young were lying prone with bullet holes through their skulls. Their insides were spilling to the ground. Some of them were still moaning as they bled out from chest and stomach wounds, calling out for their parents that were already dead beside them. He could fly Mary out of here, but it would mean exposing their flesh to gunfire. They headed toward the mall. Through a small gap in his wings, he saw some gunmen painting symbols on the smooth walls of nearby structures. They were painting in their victims' bloods from the slit throats and slashed chests of the dead to keep their supply going. That could only mean that they were doing one thing. The realms were merging. Dead souls would be kept here, unable to leave their bodies, but would become mindless flesh-eating creatures. This would be a forsaken place, and the time for ultimate battle would come far sooner than he expected. He crouched down, his bullets danced around their feet. He knew he wouldn't be able to hold out like this for much longer. His right arm was cradled around a trembling Mary, and his left held the machine gun. Listening hard, he heard the metallic clicks of a nearby gunman reloading and the boots of others converging on his position. Breathing deep, he folded his left wing and took aim at the reloading gunman, squeezing the trigger. His aim was terrible. The bullets sewed their way up the man's armor until they tore through his neck and mask. Blood and brain matter exploding in a cloud behind the man's head. He turned the gun to another that had drawn a machete and hissed at him as he ran over the bodies as if they were rubbish. Bocelli narrowed his eyes and let go of Mary for a moment, pushing her down to the ground, keeping his wing over her. He threw the gun with all of his strength, connecting with the gunman's face. His move catapulted the man into the air, snapping his neck in the process. And the freed blade spun through the air. Catching the machete by its hilt, he plunged it into the man's skull and heard a popping of another round of gunfire, taking a bullet through his shin as he ripped the weapon from the man's head, crouched beside Mary, and covered them once again. He noticed a dying boy's eyes, clearly possessed through a small gap in his wings. The boy spat his words out. Bocelli, do you really think you will survive this? You maggot! You serve a God that's forsaken all of us. This pitiful act of heroism won't change what will come. Groaning, he held his shin. The searing pain made it difficult to concentrate. He began to lose too much blood from his wounds and started to feel nauseous. There was only so much power he could heal himself, and he had to be careful when expending it. His eyes and hands glowed as he held them over his wounds. A small scar remained as they closed up. Feeling better, he knew there were safe havens they could get to, and one was not far from the square. But to fly there would be a risk. It had to be timed right. He heard the continual sound of police sirens and the firing guns throughout the city, where the screams continued. Not just right beside them, the entire city was falling, the world along with it. He would know when to send the army of angels. Lucifer, the time has come for your actions to be judged by him. I am just the beginning, Bocelli said. I was like you once, an angel. Hey guys, sorry for that slight interruption at the end. Sadly my camera died, so I didn't get to finish the rest of it. And smart me closed the window. So anyways, please go and read the rest of that story. It is absolutely amazing. It's one of my favorite ones. I don't know who it's written by, but that is, whoever you are, please keep making more content like that. It's absolutely amazing. I love it, and I love your work. Anyways, guys, I love you so much, and thank you so much for watching my videos and sitting through 20 minutes, 10 minutes, 5 minutes of me acting like an idiot. And I'm sorry if my makeup kind of creeped you out. I was going to a Halloween party afterwards, and it was lots of fun. But anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching my videos, and I absolutely appreciate every view, and I absolutely appreciate every single one of you. Anyways, thank you guys for watching. Bye!